All right, go ahead, take it away.
Alrighty. Hi, y'all. My name is Maurice Lee. If you're around the cabinet world, a lot of people know me as Mo. So I'm the Relative Service Array Specialist within Central Office. My counterpart for this training is Sheila Rimfro. I'll give her a few moments, here in a few moments, a chance to introduce herself and what she does. So what I do particularly with the branch, and this was kind of a new position that was created about 2 years ago. It's dealing with, obviously services to relative fictive kin caregivers and everything with it. So we're trying to grow and do more for relative fictive kin caregivers. As we go through the presentation, I might even spill some information on things that we're trying to do, trying to work on a grant that's actually with the Bear Foundation and also with UK as well. We're also looking at expanding another pilot of a program that Sheila will go over with you at some point. So it's really exciting to be here. So hopefully I can provide some insight as to what we are currently doing for our caregivers. Sheila, if you don't mind.
Sure. Thank you so much, Maurice. My name is Sheila Rimfro, and I work for the University of Kentucky, this College of Social Work. Specifically, I work in the Kinship program. So my specific job title is the Kentucky KINS Program Coordinator. But we, as Mo said, we are looking to provide programs for our kinship and our fictive kin families who are caring for those relative and fictive kin children. And so we're looking at a couple of different programs to do that. I'm really thankful to be here. I'm thankful to be able to talk with all of you. And I'm excited to be able to meet more families out there in our state, to be able to provide good services for them.
Alrighty, so I have a PowerPoint generated, so there'll be talking points on there. I'll stay true to what the objectives are and what's on the PowerPoint, but I just use the PowerPoint as a guideline to hopefully maybe jar conversation or questions out of y'all, because I want to be able to provide answers and feedback to y'all that y'all are most in, I don't want to say in dire need of, because we do need to do more for our relative fictive kin caregivers, but I want to also make sure that this is a very useful presentation for y'all. Shannon, can you see my screen? PowerPoint's up. All right. So we don't have to go over this first thing. Well, I guess I need to acknowledge it to my boss, Kristen Breeden. She's the acting out-of-home care branch manager. But obviously I'm from CHFS. So some of the objectives we're going to go over. The Relative Service Array is kind of our newest thing that occurred back in 2019, in which we offer relative fictive kin caregivers custody to, we're going to talk about what happens in the service if caregivers go the service array route, if caregivers decide to take custody on their own, what benefits are allotted for them. And then Sheila's going to kick in with KY KINS and kind of explain what's going on with that. It's a pilot program going in the 2 regions. And then I'm going to kind of direct you to 2 websites, one kind of newer, Just in Time Kentucky, that we have launched, and then KY Face, that some of you may be familiar with. After each particular topic, I'll open it up for questions, so that way those questions that you have in your mind, or you can get them out right then and there versus having to wait to ask them. So anything before I get started? We all good? All right. All right, so the relative service array. So DCBS, whenever they become involved with a family, and we, go out and assess the home environment and determine that the home is going to be unsafe for children to remain in, the first thing we do is we always look for relative fictive kin caregivers that are willing to take custody of kids, not necessarily take custody, but provide care for them. And so now, as of April 1st of 2019, we can offer these caregivers the ability to seek approval as a foster parent in light of taking actual direct custody. You can still actually do that, but this option affords us the ability to be able to support relative fictive kin caregivers in ways that we haven't been able to do before. Typically how that process goes, a worker will at some point contact you because your name has been given to them more than likely by that parent saying that, hey, maybe they can take, my child. And what a social worker would do is they'll come out to your home, ensure the home is safe. They would do a safety check and review. So in other words, they're going to go out to your home, do a walkthrough, make sure there's nothing hazardous in the home. Then also they're going to do a background check on you to ensure that there's nothing concerning on your criminal or history dealing with child abuse and neglect. And if they determine that your home is safe, in that process, they should be offering you the service array. And so when I talk about the service array, it's the option for that caregiver to seek approval as a DCBS foster parent. And we know in a lot of situations that's sometimes it's a quick turnaround to make a decision, but because we know taking on additional children into your home at times is, well, not at times, will become a financial burden at some point. And so we want to be able to support those caregivers as much as possible. So the decision regarding custody versus the decision regarding if you want to become a foster parent or just obtain custody has to be made prior to the first court date or within 10 days of placement. We've tried to talk to the field about being as lenient as we can on giving families time to make that decision, but the decision absolutely has to be made before the first court date. There's a link that also breaks this down for caregivers. It's in this PowerPoint, and I can send the PowerPoint to you, Shannon, to send it out to everyone. That's also a way to help you make the educated decision. But I always say the best person to talk to when it comes to making that decision should be the social worker. The social worker should be able to provide you with enough information for you to be able to take that back to your family in order to make the best decision. And so what the service array is about is so you become a foster parent, just like we have foster parents who go through training and whatnot and then become approved and then place children into their home. This is a little different. This allows the children to be placed in a relative fictive kin caregiver's home while they're in the process of being approved as a foster home. Within the relative service array, we do have a different type of licensure standard. It's called child specific. So I always tell the field workers, hey, don't worry about explaining to families the difference between basic and child specific. Let the RNC worker or recruitment and certification, they're the individuals who approve DCBS foster homes, let them walk through the family what that really means. But in a nutshell, child specific is a waiver for reduced training hours or anything that may be of non-safety standards. So like if we go out to the home and you may not necessarily have enough bedrooms for the amount of kids that you're about to take on, or some financial concerns, or some low risk criminal charges or convictions, or some unsubstantiated CPS or APS reports that we can work with, we can license you that way. But otherwise, I can tell you our numbers are if you're a relative fictive kin caregiver and you are seeking approval as a foster home, typically the agency, we work with families if they're on that edge of needing a non-safety waiver, we try to get them to the point where they can be approved as a basic home. We want all of our homes to be considered a basic home. Also, another misnomer out there, if you're a relative fictive kin caregiver and you're worried that if you open up your home for your relative, you have to open them up from other kids, you do not. You're just doing this just for that child. Now, if you would like to, maybe in the future, foster, other children, then that's available to you, but you do not have to take in any more kids. So kind of some of the financials around it, while you're seeking approval, you will receive a $6 per day per diem per child. So, and that's regardless if you're being approved as a basic home or a child specific home. Once you get through that approval process, families will, if you're approved as a basic rate, the basic rate is $24.10 per day per child. And if the child is above the age of 12, it's $26.20 per day per child. If you are approved as a child specific home, then you will receive $11.51 per day per diem per child. One little thing, a little misnomer, I don't know if any of y'all went through this process, but in the past, whenever a child came into foster care, we gave families the clothing voucher, that one-time clothing voucher, which, let's say on average, because the older you get, the more money you would be able to get on the clothing voucher, but it would maybe max out around $175 for some of your older kids. The relative placement support benefit is actually available to relative fictive kin caregivers who are going through the service array as well, but they can only receive that, not the clothing voucher. So you can receive either one or the other. We obviously promote the relative placement support benefit because it is $350 per child as a one-time payment. Currently, that relative placement support benefit is not eligible for fictive kin caregivers. I don't know if anyone has paid attention, but House Bill 492 should be going into effect the 29th of this month, allowing fictive kin caregivers to be able to receive that benefit. Now, I know it goes into effect the 29th of this month, but we still have a little bit of a leeway of a period to make accommodations for that and get our Kentucky regulations and policy updated to match that bill. So I would say within the next 7 to 8 months, we would then be able to start issuing that payment to fictive kin caregivers. But the big thing with this, just so that way everyone is aware, it's as so long that there's funding for it. So while they gave us that while they opened it up for fictive kin caregivers, the legislators did not give us any additional funds to kind of back up the additional amount of folks that will be receiving this benefit. So I know that that's one of the topics that's going to be of discussion during this next legislative session, saying, hey, we're going to be taking on more caregivers, so we need more money, so that way we won't run out, because there is a chance that we could run out and then this benefit would not be available to everyone. But it is our hopes that we could get the appropriate appropriations to be able to just go in for all relative and fictive kin caregivers. So any questions about the service array?
Maurice, there was a question in the chat from Pam. It says, can kinship parents be foster parents with a private agency or only DCBS?
So, really good question. So the benefits that I discussed earlier, you would only receive if it was through DCBS. So let me give you an example. An investigation occurs, we're having to remove kids, home is unsafe. Well, we know that that child has a cousin that is actually a NECO foster parent. Then it would behoove us to place with that NECO relative foster home. And then they would just be subject to whatever NECO's per diem is, or, whatever their guidelines are and whatnot of how they get paid and what they receive and whatnot, because we pay NECO the per diem, and NECO from that point provides their foster home with that, whatever their agreed per diem rate is. So just we can place with relatives outside of DCBS, but if you're seeking approval and you want to receive these benefits as I listed, had talked about previously, then you have to become a DCBS foster parent. Does that answer your question?
Thanks, Mo. Obviously, I'm with NECO since you used that as an example, but we've had so I feel like I've found out, I'm not incognito, but we've had a couple of parents where the state, and I think this may be where they're trying to iron out some of the provisions or whatever, where they're active foster parents with us, and then they have to transfer to the state in order to get the placement of their relative. And
so
that shouldn't be happening, is what it sounds like.
No, it shouldn't be. So, I can tell you from my experience, like I was an investigative worker myself at one point, and I was getting ready to remove kids. And then I found out that these relatives, like when I called and talked to them, they were like, hey, we're actually a foster home with, might have been Benchmark maybe. And so, you know, my initial thought process was, let me call my supervisor. I think we should place these kids in foster care and place them with their relatives so that way they can receive the per diem. So I can tell you it's a no-brainer, but I mean, some people don't think quite straight, streamlined, like regardless of if the child is in out-of-home care or in that relative custody, if it's a relative that can take placement, and if they're in a Benchmark or a NECO or a SAFI home, we should place with them, because that to me is still the least restrictive placement, because it's with family. And not only are they with family, they're going to be provided with benefits and support in order to be able to take care of those kids. So I'm a huge advocate for placing kids with relative, even if it's with with SAFI, NECO, Benchmark, or
Right. Well, and for us, we want to keep that array for the other children that are in the home with their service providers. It's almost like they're kind of getting uprooted. So if we find that there's some one-off situations, would you be the person to call to problem solve on that?
Sure, you can reach out to me. Like, that's, to be honest, it's not the first time that I've heard that happen. Like, there were like staff sometimes I feel like get worrisome about placing kids in out-of-home care and not realizing, like, if you have a relative in out-of-home, if you have a relative that's a foster parent that's approved even by a different agency other than DCBS, it is perfectly okay to go through our procedural steps and placing those kids in out-of-home care and placing them with those relatives. And sometimes it's just a simple email to that region and that worker to get them to jump on board or whatnot. So, I mean, I'm more than happy to be your liaison if something like that occurs.
Excellent. All right. Thanks for answering those questions.
You're welcome. Any other questions or anything around the service array?
Mo, there was one more question in the chat that Risa had included. And it says, what happens if a caregiver chooses to pursue de facto guardianship or permanent custody? And those are two very different things. So maybe just clarifying what those two things are, and then what happens if they decide to pursue that rather than pursuing the foster care.
So even with both terms, if you decide to pursue that, the benefits that you will be entitled to would be practically nothing other than KTAP if you're a relative, the relative support benefit at this time being only if you're a relative. And with going with permanent custody in general, like when I think of de facto, I think of, you know, you just become the de facto custodian of a child as a fictive kin caregiver. So that way, it's like, it's still in a sense a form of having some rights to that child. When you go those routes, you're in a sense on your own when it comes to benefits. And whenever you think about the service array compared to going your own route, and I might be kind of getting ahead, but I think it kind of helps with answering the question. You set yourself up for the long term. You have to think long term, like if you plan on being that de facto or permanent custodian throughout that child's childhood up to the age of 18, you have college to think about. You have, you know, whenever teens become older, like you have to think about all the sports and stuff they're going to be involved in. Those kids that are going to drive, college, anything like that, you have to think about those things, which is why I personally really push the service array. And I know there's a lot of I don't want to say pushback, but a lot of times there's some apprehension in the fact that people don't like the term like that child's in foster care. Well, yeah, I get it, but you're placed with a relative. And what we're doing is we're providing that relative with that basic need in order to sustain that placement is how, you know, how I view it. But whenever you go to permanent custody route, like if you want to eventually adopt on your own, that's all that's coming out of your pocket. If you go to the service array route and we file for TPR, we're going to be assisting y'all with that process. Also with permanent custody, you leave the door open for 2 years down the road. A caregiver can repetition the court for custody again. That doesn't necessarily mean that they'll get it if they repetition the court, but what occurs is the judge can request that the cabinet get back involved, and we look at, the parent's situation and see how they're doing, and if they have completed everything that they needed to complete before, then you're looking at a return to the parent. So whenever some of this kind of goes into my next slide, but whenever you go that route, you really kind of, I hate to say the word rob, but you rob yourself of the opportunity to receive those benefits. Because if you choose to take custody outright, if the social worker comes out to your home and you sign the form, they should have you sign it once they've explained the service array to you and you've had the time to think through what decision is best for you. If you sign their DPP 178, pretty much what that is their acknowledgement statement that you choose to receive temporary custody, then at that point, you cannot change your mind and go back and say, hey, I want to do the service array. So that decision is really important, and it's really important that everyone is aware of the implications, short-term and long-term, on what it is to seek custody or become the permanent custodian or to go through with the service array. When I talk about going through the service array, if we're not going to be able to return to that parent, permanency can be two ways in the service array. You can take permanent custody at the end, but I have to remind you, benefits stop whenever permanent custody occurs, because that's us giving you custody. If you go all the way through the service array, then that means TPR is occurring, and that y'all will be adopting this child, and this child would be your legal guard, you will be legally mom or dad to this child. Therefore, you're opening up the door for tuition reimbursement, adoption subsidies, stuff of that nature. So really that decision is, whenever you think long-term, is really huge. And I don't know if that's being pushed out enough about, you take on a 16-year-old child and, they're streamlined gung-ho for college. How much tuition assistance would help anyone, for that matter, in this type of situation? I hope that answered your question. I'm assuming so. So I'm going to go on to the next slide, which I kind of hit on this, but custody to relative or families, custody to relative, and then what's available to them through family support. So we're sticking with an investigation. So the family decided that it was best for them just to take custody themselves. So the window kind of closes on what benefits are available. So what we do is, if you receive custody yourself, if you are a relative currently, we offer you obviously the relative placement support benefit. And it's a one-time payment for that child and has to follow that child through their 18th birthday. So you only get that benefit once. KTAP, and I don't think this will ever change, but KTAP is strictly for a relative, not fictive kin. And in the next slide, I'm going to kind of go over some facts about KTAP that I think would be important for everyone to know. And with childcare assistance, I'm going to have some facts about childcare later on that I think are important. Medicaid, I have not heard of a situation where a worker has, advised a family to go down to family support or call family support and apply for medical benefits for their kids. I've never heard of a child being denied, so that's something I wouldn't necessarily worry about. SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Program, that is based upon income eligibility, and I can tell you some of the caregivers that I've ran into, or most of the caregivers that I have talked to or placed with along the way, they have not ever been eligible for SNAP. So with KTAP, applications for KTAP, you should apply as a payee for that child. That is really important. You need to say, I want to apply as a payee. And typically the applications are done or completed by call services, or you do it by an appointment online in the local office. or you can start it online at the address, the hyperlink below. So some facts about KTAP. So whenever you go to apply for KTAP, the relationship between the child and the relative must exist and be verified. A lot of times if a parent has had some type of dealing with family support, if they've been a part of the KTAP program themselves, if they've received benefits through family support, then a lot of times, a lot of the paperwork or the framework is there for the relationship between you and that child to be verified. But if not, they may ask you for additional paperwork. You do not necessarily have to have custody of that child in order to apply and receive KTAP, but the parents cannot live with you in that home where the child is residing. Household composition and absence of parents must be verified. Any income or resources that belong to the child are accountable and must be verified. So the first thing that I think of is SSI. Is that child receiving SSI? And if that child is receiving SSI, I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, it is better for you to become that payee for SSI and receive that monthly benefit than to go for KTAP, because what they're saying is, if you apply for KTAP, then the state is going to count that income for the SSI as that child against the KTAP. For children's age 16, 17, 18, they must be in full-time attendance in school unless graduated. And then here's the big one. Caretakers must agree to cooperate with child support enforcement activities against the child's parents. So if you apply for KTAP as a payee, in short, the state will go after those caregivers for child support. And so you have to be supportive of them doing that. And any money that the state may receive in regards of child support, it goes to the state, not necessarily to the caregiver. And so if you do have a parent and you know that they are paying child support, it's probably best to go down to the child support office if you have custody of them for that money to be sent to you versus the state if you're not already receiving KTAP. So any questions around KTAP? Anything in the chat? I'll let.
Yeah, Mo, there was one more question in the chat, and it was specific to, it says, in the past, kinship parents were required to seek permanent custody after 1 year. Is that requirement going away?
So it's a really tricky question because, and I'll tell you why. You get in some various parts of the state, some judges will issue permanent custody. Some judges won't, they'll leave the case closed and achieve permanency with temporary custody. The cabinet as a whole, we don't make caregivers file for permanent custody in a sense. Some judges, they may, and a lot of it's just dependent upon where you are within the state. Some judges will schedule a permanent custody hearing for you and appoint probably more likely an attorney for you, but other parts of the state, I don't think they do. And I'll probably have to still do a little bit more digging on that question. I'll write it down for me to follow back up on that. But when it comes to whenever we also talk about permanent custody, I don't know if y'all are aware of DOV Glisson, that lawsuit that provided caregivers with that foster care per diem rate in a sense for caregivers who had received custody of kids that were actually in DCBS custody prior to their placement. In order for that fund to stop, permanency has to be achieved in the DNA 9. So in other words, permanent custody had to be given to that relative on that specific form. And even in some of those cases, while we say that they're going to agree to seek permanent custody, we and the court, and it's more so the court, doesn't necessarily make caregivers obtain permanent custody themselves. They will close court at a point of temporary, even if the child is still in the temporary custody of that relative or fictive caregiver, they'll still close the case. And the family will go on as is with just temporary custody. And this happens everywhere across the state of Kentucky. And so if it's going away, that's a hard question. I think that's almost an OLS, Office of Legal Services question.
Thanks for that explanation.
Any other questions before I move on to the next slide? All right, facts about childcare. So if the cabinet was not involved in the placement of a child, then the applicant has to apply through the Division of Family Support with that number. And it's really important that you go to that avenue. If you're saying it's an informal placement, your grandmother that just has the kids, the cabinet hasn't been involved, we didn't place those kids with you, then you would have to call that number to apply for childcare. And it's important to know that it is income eligibility, and also you have to work. You have to, I think it's at least 20 hours you have to work. But if you have any questions around that exact eligibility, you would just have to call that number. But DCBS offers child care subsidies through the Child Protective and Preventive Services authorization under the Child Care Assistance Program to relative fictive kin caregiver children, where we've placed those children in your home. So if a cabinet worker placed a child in your home, and especially if we did a child care for you, at some point we know the case is going to close. But to reapply for childcare, you must email the relative.supports@ky.gov or call that number 877-565-5608 to reapply for childcare. So if DCBS is involved, you need to call CCAP or email the relative placement supports or call the number. And then if you yourself if the parents just drop those kids off, or you took in those kids at your home and you need to apply for childcare, then you have to call the Division of Family Support at their number 845-306-8959. Any questions around that? All righty, I'm gonna turn it over to Sheila for a few moments for KY Kins.
Thank you so much, Maurice. And again, thank you for allowing me to join your presentation and, of course, the meeting today. I'm very excited to talk to you about the Kentucky Kins program, which is a very new program that we have at UK have devised and are doing in partnership with the cabinet to work with our relative and fictive kin caregivers within the state. So the Kentucky Kins program stands for Kentucky Information, Navigation, and Support. Kentucky Kins for short, so it's sometimes easier to remember that way. And this program was devised to be able to meet caregivers where they are in caring for relative and fictive kin children. This program came about after UK had done some research into relative and fictive kin families and looked at some of the stressors and some of the issues, and we wanted to devise a program that could help meet those needs. And the Kentucky Kins program is one of those programs designed to do that. The Kentucky Kins program offers this individualized weekly peer-to-peer service to provide support, encouragement, and resources to caregivers. It takes peer supporters, which we have hired as employees of UK, that have this lived experience of being a relative or a fictive kin care provider themselves. And they've done that for at least a year and a half. So we've hired them on as employees of the college, and we've provided them with additional training on things from a gamut of things, from family issues to child development to things like that, to couple what their personal lived experience in relative or fictive care along with information to be able to partner with families. So we've trained them, and the training is actually well over 40 plus hours of training that they'll go through in order to be able to work individually every week with these families. All of our services are provided online through a virtual platform such as Zoom or FaceTime. So it really is designed with the perspective of meeting our families where they're currently at as far as the services that they need, but also in a very comfortable way. So no additional folks coming to your home, no increase in the amount of meetings or people that you have to work with on that face-to-face level. So, we're providing that service virtually each week through that FaceTime Zoom call, and then a follow-up call later on in the week just to check in, a phone call or a text just to say, how's your week? Has it been okay? We're currently piloting this program in 2 cabinet service regions in the Salt River Trail, which is, Hardin County, Elizabethtown, west, excluding Louisville, of course. And then we're also piloting in the Cumberland region, which is the southern part of the state. So in total, I think that's about 35 counties in those 2 service regions that we're currently working with and that we're trying to provide these services for. Our peer supporters have spent a lot of time in those particular 2 service regions identifying resources that are available for relative and fictive kin caregivers, and so that they can be able to help steer their families toward those resources when they need them. This service is only available for relative and fictive kin caregivers who have gone the route of taking custody, whether temporary or permanent, or they are in that informal placement or that arrangement, family arrangement of children that they're caring for. So for families who go the foster care route, the Kentucky KINS program is not set up to service those families. We do have additional programs through the College of Social Work that does support our foster families. And so, that's certainly a resource that any family could have access to. And it's very similar in nature to the Kentucky KINS program in that it is also a peer-to-peer mentoring type relationship. So I'd be happy to provide that additional information for anybody who might need it. But the Kentucky KINS program is specifically designed to reach those families that don't have the resources and the support of the foster care system. So we really want to target those families that are really working toward trying to care for the children within their family, and they're kind of doing it more on their own, as Maurice talked about. We want to be able to provide that support, that encouragement, and those resources, and that mentoring for those families who are doing it either because of a family arrangement or just because they have gone the route of taking custody of the kids. Now, we are doing an incentive as a part of the Kentucky KINS program, and that incentive right now is that because this is a new program, anybody who joins the program starts on a 12-week pilot. And with that 12-week pilot, every 4 weeks, each family has the ability to submit an online evaluation of the impact of the program. We really want to make sure that this program is reaching and impacting the families that we're working with in a very positive way, because we do know how stressful it is and how difficult it is. And so we want to make sure the services that we're providing are beneficial to the families that are receiving them. So this online survey isn't too long, does ask some questions about, your family setup, currently, who you're caring for, if they're relative or fictive kin, and then how the program is impacting you in your ability to care for those kids. After you complete that online survey, which again happens every 4 weeks, so over that 12-week pilot, there's a total of 3 surveys. Then after you complete that and submit it online, you'll get a $50 Walmart gift card as a way of thanking you for participating in the evaluative portion of the program as well. So we really are working very hard to make sure that the program is not only impactful, but remains impactful over the longevity that people are involved in the program. The program is available again to anybody who is currently providing relative or fictive kin care within the state, as long as they do reside within those 2 piloted regions, within one of those 35 counties that I mentioned earlier. And if they are working with the cabinet and have a social worker, of course, we want to make sure that that case is also being managed out of one of those 2 piloted regions as well, so that we can make sure that we're coordinating those services with their cabinet social worker, and so that we're all working from the same page together in helping this family. You know, again, the program is designed to provide those resources, that support, and sometimes just a listening ear. You know, sometimes caregivers just need someone who understands what it's like to be a relative or a fictive kin caregiver, and they just need someone to talk to. And so our peer supporters are great at being a listening ear and a sounding board. They don't do therapy, and they of course can't tell you what to do, but they are folks who have had that lived experience and are willing to share their experiences and to help others, you know, find the services and the resources that they need. I don't know that I said it, but participation in the program is completely voluntary. It's entirely up to the individual themselves if they would like to participate, and they're able to participate as long as they want to. So they can leave at any time, they can come back into the program, or they can stay for a very long time. Whatever that particular need is for that family, they can stay and involved in the program as long as they would like to. So does anybody have any questions about the Kentucky KINS program that I could answer? Okay. Well, Mo?
I will say that we are looking to try to expand KY KINS. We have recently applied for more Title IV funding from the Children's Bureau to hopefully expand it to 2 more regions. I thought this was really interesting. I think it was a week ago, Sheila, we had 2 caregivers that kind of gave the program a compliment. And I think what was really unique about their compliment, what was unique about the compliment was that these were 2 individuals that were in 2 separate spectrums of, say, the kinship world. One was a nurse, so, and I think she was maybe like an ER nurse, so she was in a chaotic environment, and she talked about even herself how it was so beneficial just to hear that peer-to-peer relationship. And then the next person was a stay-at-home mom who was actually a foster parent. And I think we have lost, but we're trying to get back to that, the differences of being a foster parent versus being a relative fictive kin caregiver, taking on kids, like you should taking on kids, but the different dynamic. And even herself, who has been through foster parent training, found this program really beneficial to her to help her navigate, you know, the nuances of, you know, whenever you're taking in someone else's, you know, taking in your relative's child, that you're still within that relationship with that family, you're close with that parent, because in reality, you have to be, like when you're a foster parent, you can be as close or as distant, you know, as one would like to be. Now, granted, we would love that foster parents and birth parents have that tight-knit relationship, but I'm just keeping it real on what some of those relationships are like. But whenever you're a relative fictive kin caregiver and you have sole custody yourself, there's a difference in relationship. And even being trained in that foster parent role, she still found value in that peer-to-peer relationship from someone else who had went through it and done it. So if you do know of people within those regions that could utilize that service, then please let them know. I sent Shannon a flyer that has the email links to do a referral, and you can self-report if you want to, like you can do a referral on your own self. So, I mean, I encourage, you know, to pass it along, because the more people we have do it, I wanted to become to a point where Sheila's emailing her boss and I'm emailing my folks like, hey, we need more peer supporters, because, you know, we have a lot of referrals, but we don't have enough supporters to take on the caseload. So I just encourage everyone to pass this word along.
Absolutely, absolutely, Maurice. And just to speak really quickly to what you said, it was really neat to be able to have that feedback that we received at the county level, the county DCBS level, I know when I do supervision with the peer supporters, they tell me about some of the feedback they just get directly from the clients. And generally, most of it is, thank you for listening to me. You know, thank you for, this has been so helpful for me because you understand how hard this is. And so, you know, of course, peer supporters aren't therapists. They're not credentialed therapists or anything like that, but they do have that lived experience. And that's such a unique perspective that, you know, that people really need. You know, they don't, sometimes talking to another professional isn't the most helpful thing. Sometimes you just need somebody who understands. And so that's been the biggest form of feedback that we've gotten. So thank you so much. Any other questions? Oh, I'm sorry.
There was a question in the chat. It says, how can we get the list of the 35 counties?
So I actually sent Shannon in the email, I sent you a map of the DCBS service regions. So you can send that out to everyone, showing them the map of those particular counties.
Yes.
That's awesome. I will go ahead and just say that I work for 7 counties, but I cover our region, which, you know, includes them, but all the other the other 6 counties around it. And I'm an early childhood consultant. I work with kids that are 0 to 5 who are opioid or substance exposed, and their caregivers, whoever. And so this is an awesome thing. I'm trying to figure out, like, okay, who can I send to you? Because I'm an LCSW, but I don't know all the ins and outs of that system. And so I often play that role of just giving them that listening ear, and the peer support would just be amazing. And so, yeah, I'm anxious to find out which counties and pass on the information to the other ECCs around the state.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. You know, again, if you have any questions or if you have a family or a unique situation, please feel free to reach out to myself or Mo, because we would certainly be happy to help think through any situations, or even help to you know, make sure that, of course, they'll fit with the program. But we'll love to work with anybody that, as long as they fit those parameters, we'll be happy to work with anyone.
All righty. All right, computer, don't fail me now.
Mo, did you want me to talk about the support groups, or?
You know what? Yeah, that would be, yeah.
Okay. Another program that we are trying to get launched right now is our Kin VIP support groups. And these are also geared toward the same population of folks, the same population of people who, again, are not involved in the foster care realm of things, but are involved in those informal or have custody of their relative or fictive kin kids. We are trying to get support groups going for those folks to be able to participate, again, through that virtual online platform. So it'll all be through a Zoom meeting that they'll be able to join. And so the benefit of that is that you can participate with people all over the state rather than just your local community. This program is not limited to a pilot service region, so it's open to anybody who signs up, as long, again, as they meet those, you know, those parameters of being fictive, relative or fictive kin who are not fostering. But again, the benefit of doing this virtually is that, you know, folks on one side of the state can be in a support group with folks on the other side of the state. So that can lend itself to a completely different dynamic. We currently are trying to get 4 groups launched. One I'm hoping is going to get launched here in the next several weeks, and it's almost full, but the other 3 are still open and taking signups. We're developing an online portal for those groups to run through, and so the system is actually not live yet for people to register, but I have individual sign-up links if anybody is interested. We have 2 general kinship day-to-day care type groups where people can just go and talk about being a kinship care provider and what that's like on a day-to-day basis. We also have one group that's a focused topic group that's going to be on building healthy family relationships. So that's going to focus more on building those relationships with biological parents or extended family members when you're a kinship or a relative fictive kin provider. So, and that particular group is actually going to be led by an LPCC. But it is a support group, not a therapy group, but she will be leading that and providing some of the material for that. So I did want to let you know that hopefully we'll be able to start sending out flyers and information for that program in the very near future as we get that portal up and ready to go. But hopefully you'll be seeing that coming soon.
Thank you, Sheila.
You're welcome.
So kind of the last slide, because I know we're getting close on time. I want to be kind to everyone's time because I know we were only allotted till 1 o'clock. The last thing, Kentucky, we launched a website probably about a year ago called Just in Time. And we actually launched it as a way for foster parents to get training, but we also found some benefit for relative fictive kin and caregivers to actually go and watch some of these trainings that we require some of our foster parents to go watch. And there are a wide variety of different trainings. There's trainings dealing with child development, dealing with behaviors of kids, dealing with parents who have used substances, or if you have a newborn in your home that's been substance exposed, then there's trainings around that on things that you should look for. So I really encourage everyone to go whenever they have time to Just in Time Kentucky. And literally all you have to do in Google is type in Just in Time Kentucky and it will come up, and you can go to the tab for trainings, and then you can go and see the listing of the different trainings that are available. And so, and it's updated fairly regularly. Actually, one of my counterparts on the branch, Jennifer Barr, actually helps manage this website. So it's continuously updated as new training videos are coming out. Then we go and she looks at them and makes sure they're going to be relevant for Kentucky or useful for Kentucky. And then they'll get posted on our Kentucky Just in Time website. Also, I'm sure some of y'all, everyone is familiar with KY Faces, Kentucky Foster Adoptive Caregiver Exchange System. That is where you can find all of the services listed that I was talking about. Obviously, there are tons more, but I wanted to at least hit, in a good general nutshell of what was important that was out there that I know staff are relaying to relative fictive kin caregivers whenever they are coming out to your home, and what you can apply for on through family support. And then all of those numbers and whatnot are also, you can find those on KY Faces. So do y'all have any questions, any feedback, anything at all for us? You can see my contact information is on there. I always say it's best to email me first, and then we can schedule a time to talk, because I'm a big component of, let's schedule a time to talk so that way I know I have undivided, set aside attention to talk to you and you only about whatever issue you may have or what's going on, to be able to help you the best, best of my ability. And then, we'll go from there. I'll try to work miracles, but sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I get lucky, other times there's, being honest, there's nothing I can do. But whenever there is something that can be done, I would do my best to get it done to help out anyone, any relative fictive kin caregiver.
Mo and Sheila, thank you all so much for your time. A ton of really critical information. And I can attest to Mo's timeliness and just responsiveness when it comes to relatives who are in need, or fictive kin caregivers who are in need. So I really appreciate his being so responsive, and then also the new opportunities that Sheila is bringing with KY Kins and the support groups and peer network programs. So appreciate y'all so much. I will be sending out follow-up for folks in an email, and we'll also be posting the video online. So really appreciate you all. Thank you so much again, and please have a good rest of your day.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.